I have a presentation to share with everyone. And then we're going to announce our 21-day lung cleanse that's going to be starting December, the beginning of December. And we have a special offer for you all. So I will share that throughout the program. And again, please use the question and answer box for questions. I will save time at the end to address questions. And then the chat, Darcy and Mary Agnes will be in the chat. So again, I'm really so grateful for my team. I would not be able to do anything without them. And so I again thank everyone who's joining me live. I know everyone has a busy schedule, and I'm really excited to share this information with you all today. So we're going to get started. I have a PowerPoint for you all. Okay. Okay. I think this is all good. Okay, so the topic today is really evolved around your lungs, and we're going to talk about 5 steps to recovery and prevention of viruses and pathogens. As Mary Agnes mentioned, obviously 2020 has been a challenging year for so many reasons, but it's been a really challenging year for the respiratory tract as we reflect on things. And so, of course, with the pandemic, and then also on the West Coast, the wildfire smoke, so the respiratory tract has been on a lot of my patients' mind and my mind. And so that was really the goal of delivering this information for you all today. So what I'm going to go over to with you all today is around just brief overview of anatomy and the immune system in the lung. And then we've broken down the lung cleanse and kind of this webinar around these 5 areas of focus, really to build resilience in your lungs. And so we're going to talk about the sinuses as they're a gateway to the respiratory tract, evaluating your environment, supporting organs of elimination. What are the big stressors for the lung, and then what heals the lung? And then trapped emotions in the lung, especially the emotion of grief. And then we'll be sharing the 21-day lung cleanse that I'm just so excited for. So all right. So again, the lungs are on everyone's mind this year, and you don't have to have lung symptoms to really acknowledge the power and the importance of the lung and how it's vital for your health. And so, just some basic anatomy. The right lung actually has 3 lobes. So there's an upper, middle, and lower lobe, while the left lung just has 2 lobes. So there's an upper and lower. So they're not anatomically symmetrical. There are differences between our right and our left lung. And then again, just some anatomy terminology. The trachea, also known as the windpipe, divides into 2 bronchi, and as air is being inhaled through the trachea, it makes its way into the bronchi, and then the bronchi just divide into these smaller and smaller bronchioles, and then find their way at the end in what we call an alveoli. They're these grape-like sacs, and this is where a lot of the action is happening in the lung. And so this is where we exchange oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. This is also a key area of our immune system, preventing pathogens from entering in our lung. And so, inhalation is going to be delivering oxygen rich air, and that's going to make its way into our bloodstream to oxygenate our body. And then we're going to be exhaling and eliminating waste along with carbon dioxide through this alveoli and through our lungs. And then the immune system in the lungs. So I picked this photo because it kind of touched every aspect of lung immunity that I wanted to touch on. And so many of you who have heard me talk know that I talk a lot about Waldeyer's ring. And so we know that when we think about the immune system and think about how air enters into our respiratory tract, it goes into the sinuses, which we'll be talking about, and then air goes along the Waldeyer's ring, which is that ring of lymphatic tissue that includes the tonsils. So that's going to be the palatine tonsils, the adenoids, the tubal tonsils, the lingual tonsils, and that's going to be one of the first lines of the defense as air enters our body. There's also cilia, which are these hair-like, it's this hair-like lining the upper airway where we can trap foreign particles, and we can exhale them and try to cough them up before they make their way into the lung. There's also something called bronchus-associated lymphoid tissue. As many of you might know, I'm a big fan of the lymphatic system, and we have, of course, this body-wide network of our lymphatic system, and then each organ has an associated lymphoid tissue. So along the bronchi and the bronchioles, there's this lymphoid tissue that's our immune defense as we are engaging with foreign particles or pathogens. Pulmonary surfactant is really a key piece to the alveoli. It's this lipid lining that is really important for surface tension, and it's important for oxygen exchange, but it's also a barrier and it helps to trap pathogens. So we want to have healthy surfactant in our lungs. And then there are immune cells, kind of considering them the Pac-Man of our immune system. There are alveolar macrophages, and they help to basically address and try to be that first line of defense if a pathogen enters or a foreign material enters into our lung in that alveoli space. So they're waiting there to defend our body with anything that's coming into the lung that shouldn't be there. And then I wanted to just touch on, of course, the idea of the lung microbiome. So many people know about the gut microbiome, but every really organ system in our body, as we discover in research, has a microbiome, and the lung has a microbiome. So it has a diverse species of bacteria, virus, and fungi. So, our immune system is really about the balance of bugs. And as we go through, also, I'm going to touch on the sinus microbiome. When we are sick or symptomatic, part of recovering our health is creating balance in the microbiome that we live with. And so, not all bugs are bad, and not all pathogens will create illness. It's just this diverse, complex interaction between the microbiome that we have in our body with the external environment. So, I just talked a really brief overview on the anatomy of the lung, the basics of the immune system. And then as I go through the 5 factors, I feel that this is a very empowering way to strengthen the resilience of our lungs and our respiratory tract. And it's really, I just did a whole seminar on the Beyond Biological Medicine and bringing in principles of biological medicine of why we want to focus on these factors, because I believe these factors are going to strengthen the terrain not only of your whole body, but also of the respiratory tract. And for those of you who might, this might be a new term, terrain theory is a concept in biological medicine. So it's not just about the bug, it's about the body's kind of reaction to the bug and what the body has as its own unique fingerprint and terrain. And the terrain can be a combination of our nutritional status, our toxicity levels, our energetic balance, our immune system, our mental outlook, and emotional well being. So we are complex beings. We're not just a physical body. We have all of these aspects that make up our individual health and affect our immune system. So, just to quote here, Louis Pasteur, who's the father really of germ theory, he actually was said to say on his deathbed that the terrain is everything. And so I always like to touch on that, and just my whole practice is always reflecting on this theory and this concept on how to support my patients. So we're going to go through those 5 areas of focus. So the sinuses we're going to begin with. Before 2020, my mind was often on the sinuses. The sinuses can be a key area where a lot of my patients have persistent symptoms, and it can be what we call a focal infection in the body. So an area that can be affecting the body's ability to self-regulate and heal. So this is just a nice visual of the sinuses. We have the frontal, the ethmoid, the maxillary sinuses here. And then there's a cross section, and I like this cross section because it shows really the proximity of the sinuses, not only to our windpipe and going through our trachea and going to be going through our lungs, but also to the brain. So the sinuses are a really key part of our body that we want to make sure we don't have any imbalances in our microbiome and have dysbiosis, because that's going to potentially lead to symptoms. So the sinuses have a microbiome, as I mentioned earlier, and there were a couple insights I wanted to share for the purposes of this presentation. So the nasal microbiota actually influences our host's response, and in one study they looked at the sinus microbiome in individuals, and they looked at how symptomatic they were if they had a influenza infection. And what they found was that the immune response, viral load, and symptoms of an influenza or a common cold was dependent on the nasal microbiome that individual had. So there are hallmark signs, and there are trends that we need to see if somebody has different bacteria strains or viral strains that are part of their microbiome, that they're going to either be more resilient or potentially more vulnerable to pathogens that come their way. And then I love the work of Michael McAvoy. He's a friend, and he has a website called metabolichealing.com. He writes really great blog articles. Check his website out. But he talks about, because in our world, we talk a lot about mold illness and how mold affects the sinuses. And there's a form of coagulase negative staph that often overgrows in our patients' sinuses who have mold illness. And what his quote so beautifully says, that future therapies that are designed to supplement oral and intranasal probiotic strains and to enhance their colonization appears to represent the new treatment era of Marfan's fungal rhinitis and sinusitis related symptoms. And so there are studies, especially around a probiotic or a healthy, friendly bacteria called Lactobacillus thacai, that people who have healthy amounts in their sinus microbiome, they are less prone to allergic rhinitis and fungal sinusitis. So it's a whole kind of exciting area to look at how we can really resolve a patient's persistent symptoms by enhancing and supporting their nasal microbiome. So some treatments that I love to think about when I think about supporting your sinus microbiome, Dr. Zach Bush's Ion Biome nasal spray, which is a sophisticated form of fulvic and humic acid that helps to optimize microbes in the sinuses. I had already mentioned that Lactobacillus thacai. This is new to me and new to my treatments, but I have testers and I'm excited to be using this more. Again, I have a lot of patients who have persistent sinus symptoms. We often use megaspore in our neti pots. Megaspore is a form of bacillus spores through the work of Kiran Krishnan, and it helps to really facilitate a healthy microbiome. Bacillus spores help, they're kind of the gatekeepers to healthy bugs. And then I recently did a podcast with the owner of Clear xylitol nasal spray. And this is a great, I've used it for years in practice, and it's a great, xylitol helps to not only be an antibacterial and clear dysbiotic microbes in the sinuses, but it's also great for dissolving biofilm. And so biofilm can be something that persistent microbes create to essentially evade the immune system. And so this can be a biofilm busting strategy. And in the podcast, we also talked about their research to show that it decreases the viral load in the sinuses of COVID. So it's a good preventative as well. I already touched on this, but again, whenever I talk about the sinuses, we cannot overlook this aspect. And so the sinuses, why they're a key area of focus, not only for the respiratory tract and how they're a gateway into the respiratory tract, but also because of the proximity to the brain. And so again, this is a cross section of the sinuses, and we can see that the olfactory nerves via the cribriform plate, and these are nerves stemming from the olfactory bulb, which is in communication with the brain. And so this is a really direct route of communication in the brain. And then I just put a graphic here that I sometimes share when I'm talking about pans and pandas, about how Dr. Goshtani actually with Cyrex Labs, I was at a lecture of his a few years ago, and this was an aha moment when I saw him quote this study where they showed strep in the nasal mucosa can really be a source of neuroinflammation. And he described the mechanism because of how the pathogen creates activated microglia, which actually enter the brain via the cribriform plate. And so the kind of the Cliff Notes version is that if we have pathogenic strep or other microbes in our sinuses, that can be a persistent source of entryway into the brain and can continue to trigger and upregulate microglia, so that's going to be this uncontrolled and continually persistent and turned on inflammation that can lead to neuroinflammation. And if anyone has a child or a family member or is somebody suffering from PANS or PANDAS, we know that neuroinflammatory response looks, it's very debilitating. It can be from anger and rage and obsessive compulsive disorder and a lot of mental health symptoms. So I think there's just this whole kind of new kind of frontier at looking at mental health as neuroinflammation, and how we have to look at both of those to help resolve and really cure somebody from these debilitating symptoms. So that was number one. So sinuses. So we think about the sinus nasal microbiome and how we want to strengthen the good probiotics in our sinus microbiome to make us more resilient to whatever pathogen or infection comes our way. And then the next one is evaluating our environment or your environment. So our environment has so much to do with our health. And I thought this was a great quote. I found this a few years ago, and Dr. Walter Crinian, he passed away, and he was a naturopath and pioneer in the field of environmental illness, and he did such great work for really sharing how environmental toxicants are at the root of so many chronic illnesses, and how he developed many naturopathic detoxification strategies and protocols. So he said it is quite possible that one of the most effective preventative medicine modalities would be the installation of a high quality air purifier in the home. And so really, one of the most proactive things that you can do is have really good indoor air quality. And when we think about that, we think about two things I want to talk about. Air pollution. So air pollution is linked. When I studied and researched this a year or two ago, I was just really alarmed. And I know my functional medicine teachers have shared this, and Dr. Crinian has shared this. And one of the questions in our environmental intake questionnaires is, how close do you live to a highway or a busy street? And one of the reasons is because of the increased proximity to air pollution is associated with, look at all these diseases: cardiovascular disease, respiratory, neurological, endocrine, cognitive effects, and then also linked to potentially higher risk of diabetes, autism, or IQ. So it's the air pollution. And I'll show a graphic in a moment, and it depends on what type of air pollution and then the size of the particulate that we're exposed to, and how that can basically get exposed into different parts of our respiratory tract, and then that can make our immune system more vulnerable. So it's air pollution is an entryway into our body for toxicants, and that can suppress our immune system, and the toxicants themselves can have a detrimental effect on all of these symptoms. Mold. In our community, we talk a lot about mold. Mold is unfortunately an epidemic as well, and it makes so many patients sick. Mold can be highly immunosuppressive. It can affect our neurological system. It can also affect our immune system and suppress it. It can be carcinogenic. And mold is something that we always want to screen for. I often have my patients test their home, even if they don't know about a source of water damage, or they're not sure they have mold. I think it's always good when I'm working with someone new to test their home. I often use mycometrics through the work of Dr. Shoemaker still, who wrote the book Surviving Mold and Mold Warriors. He has been a pioneer in really trying to share mechanisms of why mold can be so problematic to people. So the ERMI is more mold, looking at more molds that hurts me. If you can only do one test, I would do that one, because it looks at the most pathogenic molds that are associated with water damage buildings, and that can be most harmful to someone's health. So we have to look at air pollution, we have to look at mold, because again, we're looking at how do we support the terrain and strengthen your resilience in your respiratory tract. And so these are two big areas that we need to address and know if they are a source of, a source of exposure. And then there's a lot of tools that we can use to support and improve indoor air quality. So there's air filtration. There's so many great air filters on the market. I recently shared Air Doctor to my community, IQ Air, Austin Air. So really having, as Dr. Crinian would say, a great air filter in your home and your work environment can help mitigate air pollution and mold. For mold, you always have to go to the source of the exposure, make sure that that's remediated, rather than, I mean, you can, I know mold is so tricky and it can be so costly. So if you can only just run an air filter, of course, that's wonderful. But really, to resolve it, you have to get to the source, clean up the source, and then clean up the air. And then our friends at Briotech, they've taught us how to use HOCl through the pandemic, and how HOCl has been shown to decrease, SARS-CoV-2, not only where it's applied in the body, but also in the air. And so HOCl, we can make this complicated, or I think the easiest strategy is to get a humidifier and add HOCl. So HOCl comes in a skin spray, and then it comes as a dental SOS, which is just HOCl with saline. So it's a little bit more diluted, and you can pour that in the humidifier and run that in your home or your work if you're concerned about being exposed, and how you can optimize your air. So I thought this was a fun graphic. I think there's a lot more awareness in 2020 of particulate size and particulate matter, and masks have, obviously, depending on what they can block, we know about particulate size. And so these are the sources that can be basically affect the respiratory tract. So we have pollen and mold spores, we have dust, we have exhaust, wildfire, vehicle emissions, tobacco, and then the smaller ultrafine, which is going to be the most problematic, that are going to get into all, basically through the alveoli and get into our body systemically. That's going to be diesel exhaust, vehicle emissions, and viruses are in that category as well. So again, 2020 has been a really hard and challenging year for the respiratory tract on the West Coast. Many people were affected by wildfire smoke. So many of my patients live in California, and California was it was so sad that there were so many fires in California this year. And so when wildfire smoke is in the air, it's not just the burning of trees, but it's also the burning of what the trees actually took in from their environment, if they're in industrial or agricultural areas. And then, of course, everything else that burned alongside the trees. And so it can be a very, it can be a very substantial exposure of carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and then volatile organic compounds like benzene, and things that are going to be they're known to have a harmful effect on so many levels. And then again, what's going to be more problematic is that the fine particulate matter of the 2.5 micron size, that gets suspended in the air. So there's a period of time where this doesn't just go away overnight, but it can get suspended in the air, and then it can, there's more chance of you inhaling that if you're exposed. And then again, um, depending on the dose, the frequency and duration of exposure, this can lead to asthma, bronchitis, heart failure. And they have linked, actually, studies have linked that prolonged exposure to wildfire smoke can be linked, unfortunately, to early death, respiratory disease, and cardiovascular diseases. I don't want to put a lot of fear into people. I'm just saying that this is known, and so we need to be proactive to support our lungs if you've had an exposure. Okay, so that was so we had we just went over the sinuses as one factor to optimize, and then we talked about evaluating our environment and making sure that we can be proactive as much as possible to limit air pollution in our indoor space, and limit mold in our indoor space, so that we can be confident in the indoor air quality that we're exposed to on a regular basis. So then the third factor is that seeing the lungs as an organ of elimination. So I'm a naturopathic doctor, and this is a big area that we focus on, and there is a system known as biotherapeutic drainage, and we look at the emunctories of the body, and the emunctories are also the synonym for organs of elimination, and it's really any tissue capable of allowing excretions to exit the body. And it's really this equation on our health is dependent on how well we can eliminate endogenous metabolic waste and toxicants. So I really believe that my work is to help give people lifestyle strategies and tools to continually lower our body burden as we're completely overexposed in modern life. And so insufficient eliminations lead to toxin accumulation, and then that can affect the primary organs of elimination. And then If those are affected and can't clear and eliminate, then secondary organs attempt to eliminate these toxins. And so, again, in this kind of field of biotherapeutic drainage, we look at the primary organs of elimination. So that's going to be the skin, the lungs, the kidneys, the liver, and the intestine. So they all work together to decrease our body burden. And then the secondary organs of elimination or emunctories are going to be the mucous membranes of the urogenital tract, respiratory tract, and the gastrointestinal tract. So more the mucous membranes. So people who have a lot of itises or like inflammations, that's going to be one lens to look at that pathology, is that the body is struggling with environmental burden and elimination. So the lungs are part of our emunctory. So it's one of our primary organs. So they have the huge job to help deal with our environmental burden, and then of course normal metabolic waste. And so in Chinese medicine, the lung is the boundary between the inner and the outer world. And it's not only vital to inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide, but it's also essential for immunity and also elimination. And I think when we think about how the lungs eliminate toxins, the example that I share is that when someone has had too much alcohol, you can smell that on their breath. So the lungs are supporting the liver in removing alcohol in its gaseous form to eliminate that toxin in the body. So again, we're going to go into a lot of depth during the 21-day lung cleanse about all these supportive treatments, but these are some really easy ones to apply in your life. So castor oil, we're big fans of castor oil. It can be messy and complicated, or you can make it easy. I usually get a castor oil roll-on. I have that on my nightstand, and I use it a lot on my liver and my abdomen, but you can use it on your lungs. And I have a handful of patients who really felt helped by creating castor oil packs topically to the lungs. And for women, obviously with the lungs, you can also use castor oil on your breasts, and that can also improve lymphatic drainage and improve breast health as well. And then contrast hydrotherapy, this is the contrast of hot and cold water. And when we contrast hot and cold water, we create a pumping action in the body. So we move circulation and we move a lymph, and that can increase healing in whatever tissue we apply it to, or wherever there's excess inflammation in the body. We learn in school the rule of threes: 3 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold, always end with cold. So you can do that at home, and you can alternate with a hot and cold towel. And that can be very invigorating. You can use your shower as well if you want to use it in that way. We'll be going over different nebulization treatments. So a nebulizer is a way to make a medicine, basically a vapor that you can inhale and that it can get into the lungs more easily, so that the lungs can benefit from it, and also it can be absorbed systemically. We often use the online handheld nebulizer, and then we put things from HOCl to glutathione to iodine at times to help support the lung. So again, I just went over how the lungs need to be looked at and supported in the context also of the organs of elimination. So in the 21-day cleanse, we're not only going to be talking about supporting lung detoxification, but also detoxification of the liver, the kidneys, the skin, and the colon. So this is a big topic I could talk all day long about, but what hurts the lungs? What are the main stressors that disrupt our resilience and that we need to address, so we are, again, stronger and then we're not symptomatic? So when we look at the terrain, we think about, of course, there's a healthy lung microbiome, but then there can be dysbiosis, or there can be, essentially pathogens that make their way into our system because our immune system wasn't able to have that first line of defense, and these things take hold. So fungi, so mold spores. There can also be yeast overgrowth, such as candida, mycotoxins. So mycotoxins are produced by mold spores. Mycotoxins make people very sick. So they can be, carcinogenic, neurotoxic, immunosuppressive. They can affect the liver and the kidneys. So we look at fungi and mycotoxins. Viruses, of course, people know viruses and retroviruses. So, of course, SARS-CoV-2, and then, of course, influenza. There are viral pneumonias. Retroviruses can be exogenous, but they can also be endogenous, meaning if we have stress or viral infections in our body, we can turn on our own retroviral machinery and turn on retroviruses that can lead to ongoing symptoms and inflammation. Parasites. Parasites can live in the lung. There can be a stage of parasite that can have a life cycle in the lung. Many patients, it's been really rewarding to treat, honestly, parasitic lung infections and how lung symptoms can clear, or chronic asthma and allergic phenomenon can clear as we decrease parasitic infections. So Ascaris and Strongyloides are the main ones in that live in the lung. Bacteria, this can be a long list, but Mycoplasma pneumoniae, can be related to walking pneumonia. It's also a co-infection of Lyme, and so I see a lot of mycoplasma in my practice. So again, we're always looking at this balance of the bugs and then the toxicants, and I believe through my experience that toxicants really, that's what we're overwhelmingly exposed to day in and day out, and that our body burden has just been, for some people it's insurmountable, and then that is what suppresses the immune system and makes people more vulnerable. So this is a really big area of focus. So we'll go over heavy metals, of course, mercury vapor from amalgams or coal burning. Plants can have mercury in the air, aluminum, lead, glyphosate. So Stephanie Seneff, she talked about glyphosate and biofuels, and glyphosate related to vaping can be a way that we get glyphosate in the lung, and that can weaken the lung. And then I've already touched on air pollution. So what heals the lungs? A lot of things. So that's again why we are going to feel empowered after we go through all of this. So many people, of course, know about breath work, yoga, but really breathing and breath work is such a vehicle for health, and it's also a vehicle for engaging our parasympathetic nervous system, and really not only healing our body, but also healing our mental and emotional and spiritual state. So breath work and yoga are very healing for the lung. Anti-inflammatory foods can be very nourishing and healing for the lung. Foods also rich in vitamin C can be very healing for the lung. We mentioned improving indoor air quality, so air filtration, indoor plants. So indoor air plants can be a beautiful way to clean up the air in your home as well. And then I call it supporting the ecosystem in the lungs. So we know they're pathogens. So I went over the pathogens that are at the top of my mind often. And then it's not only the pathogens, but it's also balancing the microbiome and making sure that the microbiome that is unique to you is in a healthy balance. So that increases your resilience to the pathogens that might come your way. And then supporting lung detoxification. So there's topical strategies. I mentioned a few, from castor oil to contrast hydrotherapy. There are different inhalations that we can do nebulization wise, and then detox strategies to support the organs of elimination. So we not only have to support, lung detoxification through breath work and potentially, glutathione inhalation, but we also have to look at the lungs in the context of the other organs and make sure that they're supported as well. Just touching on this idea about lungs and grief. So I see this in practice all the time, that there can be, of course, a very, very real physical, biochemical pathology going on in someone's body. But that's often in the backdrop of potentially unresolved trauma or unresolved emotions. And it's kind of that interplay or that intersection that, that's where healing needs to happen. And so traditional Chinese medicine has known this for a long time, that unresolved grief can be associated with the lung and lead to persistent lung symptoms. So just a reflection, an opportunity to look at, if you do have a chronic lung condition, does this resonate, or is there truth in this story in your health history? And so we not only have to look at physical things to support the lung, but we also want to support you with different treatments like tapping and sound therapy and somatic work, so people who can unwind the fascia in your body and release stuck emotions. EMDR is another way to really get into the limbic system. And then, of course, homeopathy, flower essence, chakrati, my friends, Alexis, who's in the lung cleanse, her line, essential oils, they can also be a vehicle to help release trapped trauma in the lung. Okay, so we went over the 5 factors. So we talked about the sinuses, we talked about evaluating your environment, we talked about looking at the lungs in the context of the organs of elimination, talked about the main triggers, the main toxicants, and then of course, there's so many healing modalities, and then as well as we have to look at the emotional impact in the lungs. And so again, this year has been a big year of change and pivoting, and I've had a lot of fun serving people online through programs. And we did a liver flush in the beginning of the year, and then we did a hormone and lymph cleanse in June with my friend Ginger. And then Darcy and Mary Agnes really inspired me to put this together. And as wisdom of timing and cycles in Chinese medicine, winter is often associated with the lung. And so we came up with this 21-day guided lung cleanse that I'm really excited to walk you through. And then also I'm really honored about the people who came together to put this on with me. So I'm going to be leading the cleanse, but there's going to be an amazing group of people supporting you as well. So we're going to go through, I just really gave you a very high overview of those 5 factors, and we're going to go in more depth with each of those topics in a separate module. My dear friend Katie Straykosh, who was my maid of honor in my wedding, she went to Bastyr, and she's been on a journey of yoga and women's health and healing, and she's going to do a live daily breath work guided experience every day through those 21 days. Both of our birthdays are in September or December, so we're going to be celebrating our birthdays with you. And then supported recipes, cooking demos, and Q&As. So nutrition is foundational, and Darcy's dear friend who has been in guide through this year of nutrition, Candace, she's going to be over delivering on recipes. She does demos. She spends a lot of time on Q&As because we know nutrition, there's so many questions. And then there's expert talks I'm going to share in a moment. And then we want to cultivate community. So we will have a Facebook group for you all to get to know each other. So these are the amazing people who are coming together. So Kelly Kennedy, she's going to be at the, I'll explain at the end, we're wrapping this 21 days up with a guided breath retreat. So we're going to spend one day together going through a virtual retreat. Kelly is an expert in lymph, and she's going to be talking about the lungs and the lymph, how breathing actually pumps our lymphatic system. She just spent a few days with me and we had a lot of fun. She introduced 2 pieces of equipment in my office, Flow Presso and then also Sound of Soul. And so I'm sure she'll share more about that through the cleanse and through our work together. But we all just came off of a weekend of experiencing those treatments. Dr. Marie Rodriguez, she is my naturopath. She is my family doctor. She inspired me so much in the work that I'm doing today. And she's not only a gifted naturopath, but she's a gifted healer. So she has really found herself to work in the realm of energy medicine, and she does a lot of constellation work, and she in her own community does guided meditation all the time. So she's going to be part of our breath retreat and starting the day off with meditation. Dr. Todd Watts, who is a friend, and he is the founder of Cellcore Biosciences. He really recovered his own health through doing the work of parasite cleansing. And so he created this beautiful line of products, and we're going to talk about parasites in the lungs and binders. Alexis Saludos, she's my best friend, and she lives on Bainbridge, and she created an energetic line of remedies called Chakrati, and she's going to talk about this whole idea of grief and emotions that get stuck in the lung. Dr. Jerry Curatola, I'm getting to know him, but he's one of the very few biological dentists we have in this country who does amazing work, and he's going to talk about the oral microbiome and how that is related to our lung health. Julie Schiffman, she's a gifted practitioner. She does EFT. She also does body code. I've used her personally throughout the years, and she's just really amazing. And so she's going to walk us through tapping and how tapping can be a really wonderful modality to release stuck emotions in the lung. Um, Dr. Ginger Nash, who is a friend and she was with me on the lymph and hormone cleanse. She's going to talk about this whole idea of there's organ development at different times of our life, and she's going to talk about that connection. This is something that I'm so excited about. Dr. Susie Lee was with us on the lymph and hormone cleanse, and part of the breath retreat is that we're going to have a sound bath, and sound baths are just amazing ways to experience sound healing and really clear and shift energy. And then Darren Huckle, he's a friend of Darcy's, or family member of Darcy's, and he's going to talk about the whole Chinese medicine perspective of lung health and herbalism. And then Dr. Jill Carnahan, many of you know her. She is a mentor in our field, and she's an expert in mold illness and mycotoxins. And so she's going to talk to us about that. So I'm so excited for all of these guests. I always learn so much when we co-create these programs together. So I'm happy to take questions. We look at that, we ended on time. So it looks like we have a number of questions here. So let's see. Hey,
I had
Darce.
a couple before you hop into those.
Oh,
I
sure.
just I'd give you a couple that came in separately. There was a question about how specifically how would this program potentially help someone who can't clear from COVID, like they're having long-term breathing issues.
Yeah, we'll go over that in more depth in the module. So I have a handful of patients who have been these persisters, right? So they haven't completely cleared, or resolved their COVID symptoms. And so there's a complex interaction, I believe, in what I've seen between not only how the virus has created this chronic inflammatory state, but also this increase of histamine that persists in the body. So we will definitely be addressing that, Darcy, with throughout the program. I will be weaving in what I've seen. This is a new illness, and this is a new experience. So we're learning, but clinically it's very relevant. And we, I know my colleagues and I have seen, unfortunately, people have these persistent symptoms. So we're all putting our heads together to continue to help people completely heal from this.
Awesome. Great. You can dive into the questions now. There's a lot today.
Okay, so there's so many questions, which I'm so grateful for. So let's see. Tammy is asking, is it possible to get off an inhaler ever? So again, there's, that's a complex question that everyone's going to be individual. So I think what I'm hearing is if you have asthma, can you decrease your reliance on an inhaler? And absolutely. I mean, I always am a fan of having emergency medicine around, so you don't have to use it. However, can we get to the root of why you have that condition in the first place and help your body heal from that? That is the work we do. So, okay. So then there's some questions around masks, and I know we all probably have all sorts of opinions around that. And without, getting off track, I mean, the concern of long-term mask use is, of course, low oxygen states in the body and how that can lead to more symptoms, or people who are already more vulnerable and susceptible because they have a lung condition, how this is problematic. So yeah, we will talk about again how to increase resilience. So in the small times we have to wear masks, people can be safe. What is the effect of having had tonsils and adenoids removed as young children or as a young child? It depends. So in some patients, that can be actually a healing and healthy thing to do. I know I'm a naturopath, but I've also seen people who've had chronic tonsillitis or PANS or PANDAS, that really affects their lymphatic system, their respiratory system, their digestive system. And so that is something that can sometimes be health promoting. However, there's sometimes this tissue gets taken out just routinely and not for a good reason. And so that can leave scar tissue behind, and the scar tissue can affect the lymphatics in the area, or even the nervous system. And so, we use neurotherapy or different lymphatic drainage techniques to help to mitigate any long-standing or unresolved scarring or stress in that tissue. Okay. Isn't the terrain microbiome the most important throughout the body? This goes against the popular germ theory. Yes, and so that's my whole point, in that we cannot just look at a bug in isolation. That one bug is going to have the same effect on every unique individual. It's the bug's relationship to your terrain, and the terrain is something that we have, that we can be empowered to facilitate healing and strength and resilience, so we can meet the demand, that we can rise above any stress that we encounter. How do we get the PP? I'm not sure what PP means. Oh, PowerPoint.
Asking about the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a medical term that
Our intention had been to bonus those who purchase the lung program and were willing to invest in themselves with the PowerPoint, but everybody gets the video recording.
Okay.
So I'm sure that the video recording is going to be great, and we'll get everybody some notes also to go with it.
Great. Okay, so then, does adding a hydrogen peroxide to humidifier help with viruses and mold? It can. I'm more of a fan of HOCl, just with the research that I've seen, and just kind of the, I think it's just easier to be around as well. So I'm recommending HOCl. Jem is asking about chlorine dioxide compared to HOCl. Again, HOCl is less controversial, and it is a safer form of chlorus. So HOCl is hypochlorous rather than chlorine dioxide. And so different, genres of kind of the same idea to help empower the immune system to clear any pathogen that you're exposed to. How much HOCl would you add to the humidifier? That's a great question. So depending on what your concerns of, how big the room is, you can put HOCl in the chamber of the humidifier, and then you can run the humidifier, for anywhere from 15 minutes to overnight, depending on your concerns and the space of the room. I know that didn't answer your question, but those are the variables I would be thinking about. So Jackie's, why are we not talking about reproductive pathways role in elimination, especially regarding how that's affecting reproduction disease in LDs and youngsters? I often, with my patients, my female patients who are menstruating, I often share with them that menstruation is a route of elimination. So I agree, and I think that would be more the secondary organs of elimination, and that I kind of put that into urogenital, but it really reproductive organs as well. There's a whole lymphatic system that surrounds our reproductive organs, and that can be often congested and overwhelmed and overburdened. And there's so many endocrine disruptors in our environment. So yeah, I mean, it's so unfortunate that we're seeing the rise of infertility, and the rise in estrogen dominance, and the rise of a lot of endocrine issues because of our environment, and because of elimination. Okay, Ross, you're focusing on respiratory issues here, but what about the hypoxia issue and how COVID affects the blood? So not oxygenating an iron molecule, not binding to the RBCs, and what the cause of this actually not a respiratory infection. Yeah, we'll go into that. So this is, again, my goal today was just to really introduce this topic, give you an overview, but as you're discussing, Ross, a big part of the pathology of COVID is this hypoxia, which is this low oxygen state in the body, and the lungs are one route of low oxygen. But as you mentioned, the red blood cell is the deliverer of oxygen, so we have to look at that as well. Jaw is saying, I understand heavy metals are present in wildfire smoke, particularly fires in volcanic areas like Arizona. Yes, they can be. Thank you for sharing that. And then Susan has a friend that has IPF, so I think interstitial pulmonary fibrosis with the lung course be beneficial for him. Again, I always will say consult with your doctor, but there's a lot of supportive strategies that I think can support your friend, and we would love to have him. What is your take on colloidal silver taken in a nebulizer for combating viruses in the lungs? It definitely is an option. I don't use a lot of inhaled silver. I'll use silver orally, or there is IV silver. I have different strategies that I often use in the nebulizer, but that a lot of doctors use that, and that works. Corey says, what iodine type and dosage do you recommend for nebulizing iodine? So again, everyone is going to have their own, kind of tolerance to iodine. I use Lugol's iodine, and I usually start with 1 to 3 drops. That can be antiparasitic, antiviral, antibacterial. Okay, so that's a little specific. Anonymous attendees saying no mention of psychotherapy. Again, there's so many tools. And so, yeah, psychotherapy is a beautiful modality with the right practitioner. And I don't mean to offend anyone if I forgot anything. I'm just sharing what I use often.
Christine, can I offer, just somebody asked about the discount code, so I put it in the chat.
Sure.
The discount code is today, all caps, and that'll take $100 off the program. And just one of those things I can't help but share. Please, if you use those salt lamps anywhere in your home, be careful to check the cords, because if they get wet, salt and water will erode things like an electrical wire, and they actually pose a fire hazard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good point, Mary Agnes. Steph is asking what kind of glutathione is best to nebulize. I compound that for my patients. So just because of its entryway into the lung and the stability of the glutathione, I use compounded glutathione. I'm open to if there's other sources, but that's what I feel confident in at this point. Jem says, is HOCl from Key Science the same as you're talking about can get in the UK? Yeah, Key Science sells Briotech HOCl. It's the same product. How can one increase own HOC endogenous production? That's a good question. I think everything that we're doing to support your immune system and your terrain optimizes your white blood cells' ability to produce HOCl. And then Steph is saying it has a strong smell. HOCl, everyone's gonna have a different tolerance to HOCl, the smell, but it's a very safe form of hypochlorous. It's very biocompatible. Cheyenne, hi Cheyenne. For nebulizing HOCl or glutathione, is it best to use the mask or the mouthpiece? You can use the mask, but I often just use the mouthpiece. And however you're going to comfortably get the medication in, or the supplement in your lung, either one works better. Would your program be a solution to support the health of my lungs due to the bronchiectasis condition in both lungs? I would say just it, of course, would be support. I would want you to collaborate with your physician, and I think we could work together to help you. Karen scheduled for gum surgery. Can I still join the program? Yes, I think that would, I think honestly that we could help support your healing, because they're going to be tools like breath work and yoga and things to kind of get you in a parasympathetic state so you can heal. How does one who has mycotoxin toxicity plus candida begin to heal? I'm on protocols now, and your healing event is in general. So again, Geraldine, you want to make sure that you're not being exposed to mold actively, because that's going to be an uphill battle to get better. Mold can also colonize in the sinuses and then produce mycotoxins. So again, first step of detoxification is always avoid exposure. So making sure that is being addressed. And then Dr. Jill Carnahan is going to talk a lot about this. She has a great website related to mycotoxins and mold and candida. So check out her information. But mycotoxin detoxification is a lot about supporting the liver, binders, glutathione, and then candida is anything from natural antifungals to pharmaceutical antifungals, and then looking at your terrain. People who have a high load of mercury in their body tend to be more vulnerable to candida and have more persistent candida. So looking at in the relationship between the two. So Roseanne is
Dr.
asking,
C,
oh yeah,
do you want to talk for a second about the anti-inflammatory diet? Just thought with the candida question.
sure. Diet can be one piece of helping to resolve candida. I think it's, you don't want to put fuel on the fire, right? So the anti-inflammatory diet can help that. And then often, antifungals are needed alongside that. Okay. So I just lost my place here. Okay, perfect. Can I get your clinic information to get consultation to discuss a typical health problem? Yeah, I'm happy to, put that in the chat. I see patients out of Seattle, and then I can do telemedicine in Seattle, Oregon, California, Montana, and then I'm getting my license in Arizona and DC at the moment. So yeah, I'd be happy to help. And then Roseanne is asking about studies around gluten-free diet. Dr. Tom O'Brien is a friend, and he has so much great information about gluten-free diets and how they affect, how people with asthma or chronic inflammatory conditions or autoimmune issues can heal from that. Mary Agnes, is there like a resource to think about for Dr. Tom around that?
Dr. Tom is going to offer his autoimmune fix diet as a bonus to anybody who takes the class. And I'm happy to just get her some information. If you just send your email to panelists, I'll get some more information specifically to you, but he's going to give a great bonus or two to support this. So I think that's going to be really helpful.
Awesome. Hi Bev. Bev says, have you heard about the wildfires around Chernobyl? I have not. That's really sad. And then just basically about radiation elimination. I definitely want to touch on that, Bev, and I'm glad you brought that up. Dr. Todd Watts, who's going to be speaking, he continued to remind me of the relevance of radiation and how radiation exposure is more prevalent that we realize and can be really obviously problematic to our health. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay. Is this cleanse okay to do when breastfeeding? I would just be mindful of any supplements, not to add any supplements without consulting your provider. But yes, it should be fine to do that. And then does Ion Biome nasal spray help to remove mold colonies in the nasal passages? I don't think of it as an antifungal as much as optimizing the microbiome to mitigate and decrease mold. Okay. I feel like I know I didn't answer all the questions, but I just tried to get to most people.
Dr. Christine, did you answer the woman who asked if she could do this while she was breastfeeding? We
Just
answered
now,
pregnant
yeah.
and breastfeeding. You did.
Yeah, I did. I just did. Saying that you want to be mindful of the supplements, but a lot of what we're doing is education and experiences. So people, no matter where you're at, we can support you.
And our nutritional plan for this program is gluten-free, soy-free, low sugar, no dairy. So this will not be anything that aggravates anybody's existing responses. I know I'm asthmatic, so I'm super careful. So just to put that out there.
Thank you. Well, this hour went by really fast, and I so appreciate everyone who joined me live, and I appreciate everyone's interest and support. And I think that this is a really wonderful way where we can all come together to have a really unique experience and learn and share. And again, the team of experts who are going to be sharing information as well. I'm super excited that we're going to get their expertise and that we're all going to learn and be part of a community during this 21 days as we march towards the winter solstice together. So any final questions, Mary Agnes or Darcy, you think I need to answer before we wrap up?
I think there's a lot of questions and there's only so much time, but I know how hard you tried to hit as many as possible. So just thank you to everybody for investing your time in this free education to support you. And I really hope that everybody will be able to join this program. I think it's going to be one of the most important classes you've ever done. And Dr. Christine, thank you so much for pouring so much in and creating all these slides and this amazing experience. So just all of that, just don't forget the code is today, all caps TODAY. And Dr. Christine, just one more time, you mentioned a spray just a couple minutes ago. Was that a nasal spray?
Oh, the ion biome spray. Yeah, that's a nasal spray. That's one of many nasal sprays I have in my test kit that works well. That's the work of Dr. Zach Bush.
Awesome. I'll get a link for that. So when you hang up, don't end this. I'll go find the link to put that in the chat for everybody.